As Donald Trump continues to try to cover up his dark past, he's now filed a lawsuit against Rupert Murdoch and the Wall Street Journal and News Corp. Trump is alleging a defamation of character against him based on a Wall Street Journal article that was published on Thursday, where the Wall Street Journal alleges that for Jeffrey Epstein's 50th birthday, Ghislaine Maxwell, who trafficked for Epstein, was putting this leather-bound book compilation together of Epstein's closest friends. And as part of that compilation, it is alleged in the Wall Street Journal article, Ghislaine got a letter from Donald Trump where he's alleged to have drawn like a doodle of a naked woman. And in the middle of the naked woman, he writes these kind of creepy words about like, you know, their secret enigmas and how they want to, and that enigmas never age. And of course, I'll keep your secret, or words to that effect. And he apparently signed his name in the pubic region of the naked girl that he doodled. And this article has enraged Donald Trump. He apparently, called the Wall Street Journal before they published and said, you can't publish this. It's a lie. It's a hoax. I never do drawings. And it turns out he's done, drawings before. So now Donald Trump's suing Murdoch and the Wall Street Journal. Donald Trump's posted, I look forward to getting Rupert Murdoch to testify in my lawsuit against him and his pile of garbage newspaper, the Wall Street Journal. That will be an interesting experience, ! And I want to talk about why this lawsuit's going to backfire in Donald Trump's face if it's actually litigated on legal terms and not resolved through kind of Donald Trump trying to shake down Fox and Rupert Murdoch or other things like that. Let's bring in Harry Litman from Talking Feds, former top federal prosecutor at the DOJ and former federal prosecutor in the Western District of Pennsylvania, and still working on a lot of cases. Harry, are still very deeply entrenched in the law right now. So the first thing that struck me is even if it's wrong, like let's just assume that it was false. Okay. My first point is, well, why is it even defamatory as it relates to Donald Trump? Donald Trump's already been found liable for sexual assault in a civil case. So to me, that's a lot worse than saying you sent a letter to somebody that says a bunch of cryptic things to begin with. So you've already been found liable for sexual assault. Donald Trump's on tape saying, or he's recorded in an interview saying that Epstein's a great guy right around this time period. He's a great guy. He likes beautiful women. Many of the women are on the younger side. Like he's on there saying that. He's on audio recording saying that because he's rich, he's able to sexually assault women and grab them by their genitals, and you get away with it when you're rich. And then he says that's locker room talk, and that's just how men talk. So if that's locker, just let's start off with assume it's false. Under Donald Trump's own definition, it's locker room talk. It's far less worse than any of the things that he's previously said, and he's been found liable for sexual assault. And then just outside of the sex cases, civil cases, on other cases, Donald Trump's a criminal outside of that. He's been found criminally guilty of a business records case. So he's got that. So he's going to say, what, my reputation has been harmed, or like, just how does that even look, number one? But then number two, and I'm going to pass it to you, Harry. Wall Street Journal has this buttoned up. They've seen it. They've looked at it. I'm sure they've had handwriting experts, look through this. And they have a lot of other people who submitted these letters as part of the compilation. They cited all of these people, that are part of this compilation, have all these other data points. Also, Donald Trump's Department of Justice, according to the article, has looked at this and they've seen this, or they've had access to it. So Trump should know that it's real anyway. In terms of the discovery, if you're News Corp or the Wall Street Journal, you go, why don't you just go look at your file? It'll be, that file you're not releasing. You have these documents that could easily be proven that it exists, which is one of the reasons why they mentioned that in the Wall Street Journal article. But then, Harry, you open this up. Now Trump will be subject to discovery. Why is Murdoch being sued? Because Trump called Murdoch and said there's no basis for Murdoch to be deposed, so that'll be quashed and easily. Murdoch doesn't get deposed in this case, even though Donald Trump tried to call Murdoch. Trump will get deposed of this case, And it opens up everything about Epstein. If News Corp and Fox litigate this, and Wall Street Journal rather, litigate this the way a real litigator would litigate this, and not like, oh, he's Trump, blah, 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 blah. You set Donald Trump's deposition, you go through it, and you start asking the Epstein questions right away. And he won't sit for that deposition. And he'll dismiss the case like he did to Cohen's case and all of these other cases when you finally get him for a deposition. So what do you think, Harry?
It's the stupidest move 6 ways to Sunday. You make a really good point. If it got to having to show damages, what damage is it on his reputation that he wrote this letter? But man, oh man, we don't get anywhere near there. First, he's got to show, he's the plaintiff, that it's false, meaning that the reporting is false. There isn't such a notebook. He didn't write this. Someone else wrote it. As you say, it's inconceivable because the Wall Street Journal would have buttoned it up and there's all these other people who wrote. So good luck. If he actually got to that point under the constitutional law and protections, they'd have to somehow show that the Wall Street Journal was reckless or knew that the whole thing was false and put it out there anyway. The Wall Street Journal knows what it's doing and had lawyers who know what they're doing absolutely, in the middle of all this stuff at the end process. This is the news part of it. Their integrity is 100% on the line. There's no possibility of any dynamic as with ABC and CBS that they, are worried about kind of leverage from Trump. So this is certain to bring out the truth, and that means he loses. But more importantly than that, because of the way he styled it, it's just the last thing he wants, because it's an exact scandal. So you're right, and until he drops it, right, it goes on. He's filed a complaint. They're going to file an answer. That answer is A, going to be the biggest news of that day in the news cycle, and B, just be full of all kinds of stuff that shows their due diligence. And by the way, I'm sure there's a lot of other stuff they have here. I'll bet they even have planned follow-up stories, but all that's involved now is basically this notebook, and is it true? And maybe some of the details about, does the department have it? And there's just, he's dead in the water. And each time he put, it's the rule of holes when you're in a hole, stop digging. And so at each step, it gets worse and worse. So not only does he extend and reanimate the story, but it's at the end of the day, it may be somewhat up to him when that day comes. But the result at the end of the day is not up to him, because you know what? It's true. And there's no way they would be printing it if it weren't. Even if it weren't, as you say, there's 6 ways that it's still a lousy suit that anybody with any sense wouldn't bring. And the number one reason is probably the point you make. That's going to be a ferocious deposition handled by absolute pros, unafraid of Donald Trump, about the last thing he wants or can handle. Probably it doesn't get to that point. He tries to wriggle out before then. But it's a foregone conclusion what's going to happen here. And he has put it on the precise worst footing possible of making the whole thing be about, is the Wall Street Journal lying and making this up? And, I'll bet my house that they're not.
I mean, the discovery here would be a litigator's dream, right, on the defense side. It's like, we know these connections happened. Now we get to go. It opens up everything Epstein related and all of the relationship. And so the amount, every detail, you would sit there, with Donald Trump and a 7-hour deposition and go piece by piece, day by day, photo by photo. And you'd have him under oath. And what, he's going to just lie under oath? And by the way, if he now lies under oath in this context, this is one of those areas that fall outside of the absolute immunity.
Right.
This is personal conduct. This would not be subject to absolute immunity. So he can now potentially bring on criminal exposure to himself if he's going to go and lie and say that that's not his. So the worst possible decision he can make if he did this. But, there we go.
Well, I mean, one quick point, you make it so well, depositions. All you have to, any question, if you have any good faith basis to believe it could lead to the discovery of relevant testimony or evidence, and that's a very low bar. So yes, somebody told them, is it true that you and Epstein did X, Y, and Z? Every answer under penalty of perjury. A fishing expedition where they would catch some fish. Two terrible things from the deposition and the final result. He just could not have been stupider. And it's exactly the opposite, of course, of the conventional playbook in Washington. Get it all out, get it out right away, and, take the sting out. He's ensured that the sting continues and just gets sharper and sharper and sharper.
Everybody subscribe to Harry Litman's YouTube, podcast, and Substack. They're all called Talking Feds. So on YouTube, just search Talking Feds. On podcast, search Talking Feds. On Substack, search Talking Feds. Subscribe to it all. It's where I get my legal news from. Thank you, Harry.
Hey, thanks, Ben. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.